What's up, guys? This is Chris with Half Chrome. In a moment you're going to see Jack too. You might be wondering what I've got here. I've got the Mavic Mini sitting humorously on top of not the Typhoon H, but its remote control. My, how far technology has come. Before I talk about the crazy differences and how far we came in just 3 or 4 years, Jack's going to introduce the Typhoon H and remind you of some of the cooler features it has. So we'll be right back to talk about how technology in drones has progressed in the last 4 years.
All right, so this is the Typhoon H, and it's actually one of my favorite drones. I mean, look at this thing. It's huge. It's got 6 rotors. It's cool looking. It's like straight out of the movie Terminator, and it's the original folding drone. These arms, they fold up. This thing is cool. It is fun to fly. These legs, they move up out of the way, nice and slow, so that you can get this gimbal spinning all the way around the drone, full 360 degrees. It is a 4K camera, and it's actually pretty darn good, even by today's standards. Now, this gimbal is also removable, and you can use it as a handheld gimbal. That's also a kind of a neat little trick. As Chris referenced before, it's got this gigantic controller with a built-in screen. There's a lot that you can do with this thing, and it's basically an Android tablet. Now, obviously, this is big, that is huge, and we're going to compare it to the Mavic Mini, just to kind of highlight how drones have changed over the years. I still like this thing, and it's not a bad deal for about $400 these days, if you're looking for something that has the cool factor.
All right, Jack, thanks for the enthusiastic review of the Typhoon H, but let's get down to business. Let's talk about how far technology has come. Just for the most dramatic comparison, we decided to throw it up against the Mavic Mini, the smallest drone from DJI, unless you include the Tello, of course. This thing has a 2.7K camera, not quite the 4K that was on the Typhoon H, but pretty darn good. So in the background here, we're going to throw up some footage comparing the same shots with the two drones as I discuss the differences between them. It would be impossible to go over all the differences, so I'm going to focus on 3 or 4 key topics here. Of course, there's the size is the biggest thing. Now, Jack mentioned that's a positive, right? So it's going to handle the wind better. It's going to give you instant street cred, of course. You show up at a shoot, doing a professional job with that thing, people are going to think you're the real deal with the Typhoon H. You show up with this, people might wonder if you're just bringing a toy to the party. So maybe there's some benefits to size. Personally, other than just impressing people, I definitely like the small one. Super transportable, super easy to get this thing up in the air. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Get that thing unfolded. I've got 6 arms to open up, 6 props to put on also. And it's just a lot going on there. I got to remember to lift the legs if I don't want those to get in the way. Jack talked about the gimbal spinning around. You know, my drone rotates too, which rotates the camera. That does give you some more flexibility for some professional stuff. You can control it with 2 different remotes or a little nunchuck thingy and have a second camera operator fine-tune the camera angle for you. Now, with these modern drones, there's less and less of a need to do that, right? The new DJI drones all have some kind of active image-based tracking system in them. Many times you don't need that other operator. You know, that's just the way technology is going, much more in the way of advanced flight modes. The Typhoon H has very little there in terms of that. It has a circle mode, but if I remember correctly, it only circles around you. Very complex to use. Let's talk a little bit more about this remote. So it has got a lot going on. All these switches here, different ways of gimbaling, different ways of controlling the gimbal, different ways of controlling the speed of the drone. I do like some of those features, but it's kind of not all that well executed here. The biggest problem with this remote is the mode switch button. So as I'm here, maybe wanting to play with the landing gear, right here is the smart versus home versus angle mode. Now, angle mode is normally how we would fly a drone like this. But if you accidentally hit that switch, you could be in real trouble. The smart mode is kind of like a home lock, where the drone always flies as if it's facing away from you. Regardless of which way it's facing, left is always going to be left. But if you're not aware that you bumped that switch by accident, you can get really confused and crash the thing. It also acts just really funny sometimes, this drone. Trying to land it one time, it was bouncing. It looked like it was going to come right at us. Had a hard time landing, and part of that is because it has no downward facing sensors. No camera facing down for optical flow. No infrared distance measurement or sonar-based, sound-based measurement. So it makes it actually pretty hard to land this. It also makes the drone a lot less stable, as you can see in this footage. Just trying to line up in front of this house, just to go straight up, had a lot more trouble positioning the Typhoon H than I did the tiny little Mavic Mini. I mentioned before the gimbal control on the Typhoon H. On this little mini remote, it's a really simple action here. And what I noticed was I was getting a lot of first take shots. I had to do the same flight path multiple times. Just had a really hard time with the Typhoon H getting the gimbal to move slowly and smoothly. Now, some of that might come down to practice. I've definitely been flying with this style of DJI remote for a lot more flights, a lot more time in the air with it. But that being said, I just don't think I could get there. The controls that DJI has implemented now, even on their least expensive drones, are just easier to use. Another problem I've had with the Typhoon H, I've mentioned before, the GPS stability, no optical flow, just really making me uncomfortable. The drone would sometimes just start to move like 10 or 20 feet. When you have a drone that big, that could be very intimidating and a little threatening to the people around you. Not to mention the intimidation factor of the 6 giant spinning props. Let's talk a little bit more about the video quality. I will say the 4K footage out of the Typhoon H is super impressive. Seems to destroy my monitor's capabilities. You can tell it is just super sharp. What I don't like about it is the really wide field of view. I used to like that, but what I'm discovering now is it just looks less cinematic. That really wide adds some distortion or corrected distortion. It's never going to look quite right. The narrow field of view that DJI has been moving towards in its last several drones, I think is a better compromise. Certainly my favorite, the Mavic 2 Zoom, gives you even more capabilities with a wider field of view if you want it, even wider than the Pro, or significantly more narrow, especially when recording in 1080. You can do that 4x zoom.
Let's take a look at a couple more clips. This one here is 4K from the Yuneec Breeze. Kind of a little smoke in the background, kind of neat effect there. You can see fantastic color, super sharp, just looking really good. After the drone was kind of lined up, it was good to go. Now we're looking at that same shot, shot 2.7K. Of course, it has been upscaled to 4K, just the way that we have to do it for the video. And then just going up, you can tell it looks a little darker to me, not quite as vibrant. All right, so another shot here with the Yuneec. Now this one, not the best shot actually. We had a little bit of difficulty controlling the gimbal, and Chris spoke to that. Just not as smooth or as intuitive or maybe as easy to kind of control as some of the DJI products. Now let's take a look at that same clip, this time from the Mavic Mini, 2.7K, again upscaled to 4K. And you can see it just kind of feels smoother, easier to control, and that's just kind of what you're going to get from a drone these days, a more modern drone. Actually, those colors look pretty darn sharp, really nice. A lot of people knock on the Mini, but it's still a solid drone.
So man, am I glad I don't need to fly the Typhoon H anymore. I'm super happy I can fly these smaller, foldable, and more capable drones from DJI these days. And I'm not just a DJI fanboy, I just really like these smaller drones. This thing is a beast, it's intimidating, and you can screw it up in so many different ways. Technology is progressing and we're doing a lot better. In 3-4 short years, we have progressed so far. Now, if you're convinced by Jack's arguments, you can buy this drone. You can still pay full price for it, over $1,000, or you can pick them up for $300 to $400 on eBay and stuff like that. It's not a bad drone if this is what you're looking for. If you want to learn more about modern drones, what's coming out next, like the next version of the Mavic Mini here, for example, make sure you subscribe to our channels. We'll keep you up to date with everything coming out. You can also check us out at halfchrome.com. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you guys next time.